So there's another shoe to drop on a Khashoggi case. Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist, dissident, former person from Saudi Arabia that moved to the United States and became a journalist writing bad things about the Saudi government. The one that was brutally murdered, that was chopped up, that was had his body parts thrown apparently into the garden or something to that effect, by a bunch of thick-necked goons who essentially got off of an airplane and got back on an airplane after the deed was done, while the woman that he loved waited outside for him. It is a grim, gruesome tale. But it gets weirder. So, apparently, Britain knew about this plot to kidnap Khashoggi for 3 weeks prior to the kidnapping. I gotta be honest, if Britain knew about it, the United States knew about it. I have a hard time believing that Britain knew about it and the United States didn't know about it. And we already know that the United States had already, the intelligence services had already got wind of this. We don't necessarily know when they got wind of this. Britain knew about this 3 weeks in advance. MI6 pleaded with them to abort. That's the term that's used in an article. Pleaded, begged them to abort this. Don't do this. Don't do it. Don't do it. Those pleas were ignored. Now the interesting thing is Khashoggi, and this is going to be a new video, but Khashoggi apparently had gotten wind of information showing that Saudi Arabia was using chemical weapons in Yemen. We're willing to go to war with Bashar al-Assad over this. Can you imagine the embarrassment? Is the United States going to bomb Saudi Arabia? Is that what's going to take place? Is Israel going to bomb Saudi Arabia? Is Britain and France going to put their might, their wonder twin powers that bombed the hell out of, destroyed Libya, destroyed Iraq? Are they going to go and use their powers to destroy Saudi Arabia? Of course not. It's not going to come up. Fact of the matter is, Khashoggi apparently was trying to get information on this very particular point. The article goes further because the article makes this argument, it makes this point that real news is made. That the characterization that people are making in the media and around the world that this was this kind of lefty, progressive journalist who was just killed by Saudi Arabia was not necessarily the correct image. The guy, and they go so far as to say the guy was an Islamist, and was part of that family at one point. Let's go to the article, because this article is amazing. And I'm not going to keep this one long, and I know I always say that, but I mean it this time. So, Khashoggi bombshell. Britain knew of the kidnap plot and begged Saudi Arabia to abort plans. Murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi was about to disclose details of Saudi Arabia's use of chemical weapons in Yemen, sources close to him said last night. The revelations come as separate intelligence sources close to Britain have first been made aware of a plot 3 weeks in advance before he walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Intercepts from the GCHQ of Internal Communications of the Kingdom's General Intelligence Directorate revealed orders by a member of the Royal... I'm sorry, I've been doing this all day. Orders of the members of the Royal Circle to abduct the troublesome journalists and take them back to Saudi Arabia. Now, let's go here. Speaking last night, the intelligence sources told the Sunday Express, we were initially made aware that something was going on in first week of September, around 3 weeks before Mr. Khashoggi walked into the consulate on October 2nd, though it took more time for other details to emerge. These details included primary orders to capture Mr. Khashoggi and bring him back to Saudi Arabia for questioning, quote unquote. However, the door seemed to be left open for alternative remedies to what was seen as a big problem. We know the orders came from members of the royal circle, but have no direct information to link them to the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Whether this means he was the original issuer, we cannot say. Crucially, the highly placed source confirms that MI6 had warned his Saudi Arabian counterparts to cancel the mission, though his request was ignored. On October 1st, we became aware of the movement of the group, which included members of the, oh God, I can't say that, the Risad al-Sqabrab al-Aham, GID. Yes, I murdered that, but I went for it. Don't laugh, I went for it. Istanbul, and it was pretty clear that what their aim was. One guy had a bone saw. Let's be clear. He had a bone saw. He didn't have a bone saw because they just liked carrying a bone saw. He had a bone saw because he was going to use it. It was meant for purpose. Through channels, we warned that this was not a good idea. Subsequent events showed that our warning was ignored. Asked why MI6 had not alerted its Five Eye intelligence partner, the United States, assuming that the United States didn't already know. I don't know why they assumed that. Khashoggi was a U.S. resident, the sources said. A decision was taken that we done what we could. That's amazing, right? That's amazing only from a thing of perspective. If you take the perspective that Jamarl Khashoggi was just a journalist, he was just a journalist who just believed in Saudi Arabia and was just fighting for the betterment of Saudi Arabia, just criticizing the government. And he was just this lefty progressive that came to the United States. He just loved this woman. He wanted to marry this woman. And so he went to Turkey consulate for love. Then yeah, you can come away with this idea of why didn't you alert them and tell them that this guy was going to get murdered. But maybe that's not the perspective of the intelligence services of Jamarl Khashoggi. Let me explain what I mean. Regardless of the perspective that they're trying to portray of him, right here. Ask why MI6 right. However, analysts offered one possible explanation. The misleading image that has been created of Jamarl Khashoggi's cover up more than it reveals. As an insider to the Saudi regime, Khashoggi had been close to former head of the intelligence agency. He was an Islamist, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and someone who befriended Osama bin Laden and had been sympathetic to his jihad in Afghanistan, said Tom Wilson of the Henry Jackson Society think tank. All of these connections have been hidden by the simplistic narrative that Jamarl Khashoggi was just a progressive freedom fighter and journalist. It isn't plausible that he was murdered simply for being a journalist critical of the regime. The truth is much more complicated. Last night, a close friend of Mr. Khashoggi revealed that he was about to obtain documentary evidence proving claims Saudi Arabia had been using chemical weapons in a proxy war in Yemen. It's not a proxy war. I mean, they keep calling it a proxy war because they keep saying Iran is somehow infiltrated Yemen. But that's not all that clear. This is just what they're saying. There's a difference in those things. That's justifying them murdering these people. I understand that's what they think. I'm saying objective reality may be different. I'm just saying there's a difference in those things. I'm not accepting that as a word of God, even though they put it that way. I met him a week before his death. He was unhappy. He was worried, said the Middle Eastern academic who did not wish to be named. When I asked him why he was worried, he didn't really want to reply, but eventually told me he was getting proof that Saudi Arabia had used chemical weapons. He said that he had hoped to get documentary evidence. While there have been recent unsubstantiated claims in Iran that Saudi Arabia had been using or supplying ingredients that could be used to produce nerve agent sarin in Yemen, it's more likely that Mr. Khashoggi was referring to phosphorus. I think they spelled that wrong. Last month, it was claimed that Saudi Arabia had been using U.S.-supplied white phosphorus, okay, now spelled correctly, munitions against troops and even civilians in Yemen. If Mr. Khashoggi did in fact have proof Saudi Arabia was deliberately misusing phosphorus for this purpose, it would be highly embarrassing for the regime and provides the nearest motive yet as to why Riyadh may have acted the way they did against them. Meaning, they're making the case that, look, this guy didn't kill him just because he was thin-skinned, even though, yes, he probably was thin-skinned. He might have offed them because they thought he was going to get evidence proving that they were using chemical weapons in Yemen. And you can imagine that with them being close allies to the United States, and the United States has been flipping out, and Britain and France have been using that as a justification to try to instantiate themselves into Syria, that this would be somewhat problematic, seeing as this is a close ally. And it's very possible, that if this is true, and if the United States knew this, would it be insane for the United States to let it ride? To let it ride? I don't know, I'm just asking questions. But it's very, if that's true, and if Khashoggi did have evidence of this, that is a bombshell. Either way, the story is a bombshell. Britain knew about this 3 weeks in advance. That's amazing. U.S. might have green-lighted to kill Gardner. Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. Like, understand the situation. You've flipped out over Syria, supposedly using chemical weapons. You've used Britain, France, and the UK as these triple twin powers, triplet powers, with this idea of instantiating yourself further and further into Syria, creating a proxy war in Syria, and instantiating yourself further when the terrorists that you were funding didn't get the job done because Russia and Iran instigated themselves into a conflict that you didn't realize that Russia and Iran was going to instigate themselves into the conflict. The country that you green-lighted, meaning the United States green-lighted this war against Yemen, you find out that Khashoggi may have evidence that these guys were going to out the fact that they were using chemical weapons. You're Donald Trump. What do? Do you alert Khashoggi and allow him to reveal the fact that your ally that you've boosted and that you've assiduously stuck to has been using chemical weapons after flipping out and using chemical weapons as a justification to go into Syria? Or do you let it ride? I suspect they would have let it ride. I suspect that may be the reason they let it ride. And it's possible that that's also the reason why the UK let it ride. The UK didn't have to alert the United States because the United States probably already knew. The United States did already know. The question is, how early did the United States know? If Britain knew 3 weeks in advance and Saudi Arabia is a close partner to the United States. I guess I'm making the point. The case of Khashoggi is getting much more complicated. It's getting much more complicated. Garnome, Jamal threatening to release chemical weapons info makes no sense unless he wanted a bribe to shut the fuck up or something. Makes no sense to turn on Saudi Arabia over journalism. What do you mean? He had already released that information. I think you're missing this, Garden. I mean, this guy... An argument can be made that he chose a particular side, and a side that wasn't necessarily affiliated with the person who's in power. And if he was trying to tear that down, it's not insane that he would have got that information to release. This story may be false, but I don't know that. And if the reporting is correct, it's possible that he might have been trying to get that information. This is not insane. Cryptic Warrior, like the United States used that woman now sitting in jail to get info and supposed to protect her, and didn't, Trump is using pawns and dismissing them. Mike, if Britain knew the United States had to have known, yeah, that's my thought. They were going to off Khashoggi. I'm not surprised. It's typical of the United States knowing its own history. Yeah. This gets grimmer and grimmer every day. The investigation is taking place. I have no honest belief in investigation. And All of this, to some degree, I think is some political theater. Still some fishy aspects of the story that don't quite make sense. Garden, I agree with you on that. That I agree with you on. I don't believe that they went there, the guy with a bone saw went there purely just to interrogate him. I don't believe that at all. They went there to kill him. I mean, the question becomes, why did they kill him? Did they kill him just because he was a journalist and he was pissing them off? Did he kill him because they looked at him as this kind of dissident that was talking smack about them? Or did they kill him because he had something going on him? All of this looks, all of this smells, all of this smells. Like you said, there's some fishy aspects of the story. So, but nevertheless, there's more and more coming out about this that is wilder and wilder as it goes along. So, fact of the matter is, would I be shocked that they use chemical weapons in Saudi Arabia? No, I would not be shocked. I mean, in Yemen, I would not be shocked in the least. Would I be shocked that the United States would not want that known? I would not be shocked in the least. Do we know that Khashoggi was going to get that information? We do not. We do not. This anonymous source stuff, I don't particularly like. I can't impeach the credibility of the source, so it's hard to know. These guys were speaking from the shadows. That said, what we do know as an absolute is Jamarl Khashoggi went into a consulate. Jamarl Khashoggi was cut up into pieces. Jamarl Khashoggi was tortured. Turkey has been passing that tape around. The reason why this took place is at this point the question. That's the question. That's the only question. That's the only question. This report seems to make the case that they were being cut to pieces. The media story is complete bullshit. Yes. You know, that's the wild part. Like, the thing I love about this article is the article makes the point that the simplistic narrative that the media has been putting for this guy, I've just taken the position that just the basic details. A man walks into a consulate, a man gets chopped to bits. I don't need to make him into this, you know, this lefty journalist who's fighting against, no, nonsense. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. All right, I'm not going to keep this one insanely long, but this story is profound and amazing to me. There is a magnificent amount of hubris in offing a guy in this way. He walks into an embassy and doesn't come out, and nobody believed that he would be missing. And I have to believe either this was profound hubris or the killing him was like, it's one of those things. It's like, I'm sorry, I kicked your dog. When really you didn't kick the dog, you threw the dog down the steps. Kicking the dog, as bad as it was, is an easier cover as opposed to admitting that you threw the dog down the steps. This is, you know, is this something similar here? Oh, okay, we killed him. Okay, yeah, but why did you kill him? And then you find out that he may have had something on the regime itself. Not so much that the guy was just completely thin-skinned, which is probably true, but there may have been something on the regime. Is it possible that there was something on the regime and they offed him? We don't know. This report is saying MI6 begged them not to do it. So, yeah, Lawrence Wickelson. Yeah. The real news, I know, right? I always said it's not going to keep this one long. The real news has been awesome on this. Awesome. Real news in general is on point. Paul J. Love Paul J. Love Armitage. Both of them been kicking ass. Yeah, the network has been kicking ass. I've been loving them more and more. I have to be honest, I can't keep up with the real news. They have an entire team, and I know it's a unlikely aim to even try to do so, but there's no way. There's no fucking way. They're on all of this stuff. So media falling all over themselves to paint Jamal as a martyr for journalism has been absurd. But that's what they've been doing. Now, part of this, you must understand, has been to attack Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump has allied himself with Saudi Arabia, and so they look at Saudi Arabia as a way, as a in to attack Trump by saying you're allying yourself with these guys who are maniacs and cutthroats, while simultaneously trying to whitewash Obama's behavior towards and obsequiousness towards Saudi Arabia. All of this is being done to attack Donald Trump. The only reason Saudi Arabia came out and admitted that this was, yes, we did it, was because their story was absurd. Mike Pompeo went to Saudi Arabia and probably told them to fix this shit. Somebody needs to take the fall for this because nobody is believing your story. I suspect they were trying to get their story together, in which case they put this out. Now, that said, I don't know who the source is. The source is close to, I don't know who the source is. So take this stuff with a grain of salt. Always take this stuff with a grain of salt, especially when they're talking about anonymous sources. The fact is, they did kill him. And they did try to cover it up. The most horrible, ridiculous cover-up in the history of cover-ups. But I do suspect this part is more right. The misleading of image that's been created by Jamal Khashoggi covers up more than it reveals. As an insider to the Saudi regime, Khashoggi had been one of the close former heads of the intelligence agency. He was an Islamist, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and someone who befriended Osama bin Laden and is sympathetic to jihad in Afghanistan, said Tom Wilson. One of the other things was his writings in Arabic, meaning many of the Western journalists can't read Arabic. And so they can't necessarily interrogate what he's saying when he's writing in Arabic. And what he writes in Arabic tends to be a bit different than what he writes in the Washington Post. According to at least the accounting of Real News. That said, this is a bombshell if this is true. Because this implicates Saudi Arabia in using chemical weapons to murder Yemenis and kill, essentially at this point, civilians. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. We have no idea. Alright, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. I think right here. That's not a prison tattoo. I know that looks like a prison tattoo. Every time I see that, I'm like, God, that thing is horrendous. When I was during the ATV fall, I fell face first, like just face planted, and I ripped the skin on my face. It looks like one of those tattoos that gang members get after they kill somebody. It's like, I murdered my first person. No, it looks fucking horrendous. Goddamn thug. All right, I'll end this here. Y'all have a good one. I'll see you guys in a few. Bye-bye.